James Cook and the Buffalo Bills running backs were highly productive in 2023. What will 2024 look like? I'm breaking down the dynamics surrounding the Bills running backs entering 2024 today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run, also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down. The sports stop sporting like we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Well, folks, welcome in. It's time to discuss the Buffalo Bills running backs and all the dynamics surrounding James Cook and Ray Davis and Ty Johnson in 2024. My biggest concerns, what I'm excited about, and a big picture conversation about how this all comes together. So let's dive into it. And I want to start with what makes me excited about the Bills running backs in 2024. And to me, it starts with what they did last year. The Bills' rushing production from their running backs was outstanding. And I know that you look at the overall rushing offense picture, and that does include quarterback runs, but I'm talking just the running backs. Take Josh Allen's rushing production out of the equation. The Bills' running backs were highly productive in 2023. They had 1,688 rushing yards, ninth most in the NFL, 642 receiving yards, 10th most in the NFL. So top 10 among running backs in rushing yards and receiving yards. That is a really strong foundation for the Bills and this backfield entering 2024. And it starts with James Cook. James Cook and his opportunity in 2024 to build off of his breakout season. That's what James Cook did as a sophomore. He absolutely delivered a breakout season. 6th in yards from scrimmage in the NFL with 1,567. 4th in rushing yards in the NFL with 1,122. 8th in receiving yards among running backs, 445 yards. 10th in total touches with 281 yards. I mean, James Cook delivered the type of production we hadn't really seen since LaShawn McCoy. And then when Joe Brady took over as the Bills offensive coordinator, the opportunity increased for James Cook. Comparing James Cook with Ken Dorsey versus James Cook with Joe Brady, he saw an additional 5 carries and 1 more target per game under Brady. So what makes me excited about the Bills running backs? It's James Cook and what he did last season and the opportunity that he has with Joe Brady. I mean, he's a young player. He's an explosive playmaker. And I very much believe that James Cook is still defining himself as a player, which is so interesting. Because if you look at his entire, big-time football career, whether that's at Georgia or with the Bills, he was never a featured back until last season. And that's 4 seasons at Georgia. That's a rookie year in Buffalo. He was never the lead ball carrier. And so I think James Cook is still very much figuring out who he is as a back, what his play style is. And even while doing so, he delivered what he did last season. There's a lot to be excited about as it relates to James Cook. Now, there's things to be concerned about, but we'll get to that in the next segment. This is the portion of this conversation where I tell you what I am excited about. And it's James Cook building off of a really, really strong breakout campaign in 2023. The next thing that I'm excited about is the arrival of Ray Davis. The Bills invested a 4th-round pick in Ray Davis a running back out of Kentucky, who I think provides a very complementary skill set to what you get in James Cook. I think most everything that's missing in James Cook's skill set can be found in the form of Ray Davis. 5'8", 211 pounds. I mean, he's got that dense, squatty build, built like a fire hydrant. That low center of gravity really helps him sustain himself through contact and win between the tackles as a runner. And he's also got a very, very good receiving profile. This isn't just the type of running back that can leak out into the flats, throw him the football, and it will compete for yards. I mean, this guy can run some routes. Kentucky got him going on wheel routes down the field. He's got very good hands. He's a good route runner. He's a good receiver. And he's also the Bills running back that I look at as the one who brings the most upside in pass protection. We'll talk more about that in the next segment, but you figure this running back trio to be James Cook, Ray Davis, and Ty Johnson. Ray Davis is the one that I feel like can be the biggest asset in pass protection. And don't thumb your nose at pass protection for running backs. It is a critical piece of what they do. Critical piece. If you want to have those six-man blocking surfaces and, not keep tight ends, you want to keep in a running back, it's huge. It's absolutely huge for your protection schemes and how you can really design how you're going to handle a defense and how they're going to attack the pocket. Your running back's a big part of that equation. So I'm excited for the arrival of Ray Davis and how he can absorb so many of the things that you think maybe James Cook doesn't bring to the table, whether that's pass protection, short yardage, between the tackles and heavy boxes, that type of stuff. Provides that physical element. And I'm excited for Ty Johnson. I'm excited for Ty Johnson specifically back under new circumstances. And if you guys recall, when the Bills signed Ty Johnson last year, I was pretty excited about that. I used my line that, hey, look, this isn't a nothing signing. This isn't just a random add to the roster. This is a guy that has size, has speed, has a special teams background, and really profiles quite well to me as an RB3. Can do a bit of everything, right? Not really a standout in any one area, but he can run between the tackles. He's got speed to the perimeter. He can catch, play special teams, both as a guy that can return the football, but also cover kicks and punts. I mean, there's a lot that he can bring as an RB3. And if you remember, I started this Ty Johnson piece of the conversation by saying Ty Johnson back under new circumstances. Ty Johnson didn't have a role early on with this team in 2023. Damian Harris got injured, and that kind of opened the door for his involvement. And if you look at the Joe Brady offense, really starting in week 11, so from week 11 through the divisional round, which is an 8-game sample size, Ty Johnson averaged 6.5 touches per game. That's decent, right? That's a decent amount of opportunity. And he's the type of player that you just kind of can feel him, right? I mean, you watched the Bills last year. You knew what happened when Ty Johnson got the ball. You felt pretty good. You felt like, this guy's got a little something to him. Think about that receiving touchdown against the Jets where Josh Allen was able to find him, and you just saw him like break pursuit angles down the sideline and score. Guy's got some juice about him. And I think the totality of his skill set is wonderful for an RB3 role. So there's plenty to be excited about with this Bills running back situation, but that doesn't mean that there aren't some concerns. I'm going to break all of that down for you here on the other side of it, so be sure to stick with me. I love sports. I love them so much and never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. In fact, they've got some fun football's futures bets that you can check out for the Bills. Right now, Josh Allen plus 800 to be the MVP. They've got Dalton Kincaid, the over-under for his receiving yard set at 775.5. I like the over there. They also have the Bills at plus 165 to win the AFC East. That's the best odds of any team in the division. So head on over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, we had a good conversation in the opening segment talking about why you should be excited about the Bills running back situation. And now I want to talk about some of the concerns that I personally have surrounding this group. And I'll start with this, and it's very much to an extent. Like, to an extent, I am worried about depth, not the 1 through 3. Give me James Cook, Ty Johnson, Ray Davis. If you told me those are the backs all season long, sign me up. I like that. But what you really don't have here is a 2024 version of Ty Johnson. Like, you're one injury away from any one of those guys, Cook, Davis, Johnson, from Darrington Evans or Frank Gore Jr. being rostered. And Darrington Evans has just bounced around for however long he's been in the NFL, a couple of seasons, hasn't stuck anywhere. And then Frank Gore Jr., an undrafted free agent that's highly, highly limited in terms of size and athleticism. I know he's Frank Gore's son and all that, but that doesn't, come on. There's a reason he went undrafted. Very limited player. You're one injury away from one of those guys being rostered. And that's what I love so much about Ty Johnson. You said, okay, James Cook, Damian Harris, Latavius Murray, and then you got in your back pocket on the practice squad, Ty Johnson, you feel good about it. Well, you don't have that guy right now. So I think to an extent, depth. But again, not bad when you're talking about your concern being your 4th running back, right? Running back production, running back depth is about as easy of a thing as you can find in the NFL. So I'm not really panicking, and that's why I led with to an extent. Number 2, or probably I should have started with this, but it is pass protection. I don't really look at pass protection as a strength of any one of these running backs that the Bills have. And someone's going to have to pick that up. You know, I know Latavius Murray, not a lot of fans from what he did down the stretch when his legs got tired, but he was still an asset to the football team and pass protection. And I don't think between Ty Johnson, Ray Davis, or James Cook, you have a guy that really excels in that capacity. Now, I think Ray Davis can be the guy that does it. I went back and watched some more of his tape at Kentucky, and I think what I'm encouraged about with Ray Davis is I think he's mentally very good in pass protection. I think he knows where to help. I think he's willing to help. He just has to get some technique stuff down with how he blocks. A lot of times he's just trying to throw his shoulder into guys, and that's not going to work in the NFL. Like, you've got to be able to square up and get your hands fit and then be able to move your feet and stay square to a guy. You can't just throw a shoulder at him. So if he gets the technique stuff down, I feel pretty good about him being able to be an answer, but that remains to be seen. Go back to 2023, and I want to give you the pass blocking reps, the pass blocking snaps for running backs and who they went to. Latavius Murray got 50. James Cook got 41. Ty Johnson got 12. Reggie Gilliam got 10. Damian Harris 9. Leonard Fournette 1. And then if you go back to Devin Singletary, in his last 3 seasons, so after his rookie season, Devin Singletary had at least 90, sometimes over 100 pass blocking snaps per season. And a lot of people, when I bring this up, they come back and say, well, what about Reggie Gilliam? Can he do this? Can he do that and provide more value? He's only had 38 pass blocking snaps in 4 seasons with the team. And you want a guy, if you want to put a guy back there that can pass block, they also have to have some level of a threat as a regular running back, both as a runner and a receiver. That's not going to move the needle for anybody. I think teams are just going to, you're sacrificing 20% of your eligibles for it to be Reggie Gilliam, and it'd be a major tip off that, all right, that guy's not really a threat. That's why you need for one of these meaningful running backs to be able to also pass block. And I'm hopeful that James Cook can develop. I'm hopeful that Ray Davis can do it. And, you know, Ty Johnson can show some growth as well, because this is definitely a concern of mine. The next thing is, I hate to call this a concern. It's more of a curiosity piece. I'm really curious about what more James Cook can showcase. Because he's explosive playmaker. He's highly productive. I get all that. He's young. It's all exciting. But he doesn't come without warts. And his warts are kind of concerning. Because I don't know how much better some of this can get. I don't find James Cook to be very good in terms of contact balance. Every metric in the world will tell you that. He doesn't get a lot of yards after contact. And I don't think he has the type of frame that lends itself well to do that. He's 5'11", probably between 190 and 200 pounds. That's tall, lean. That's not going to be able to win through contact in the NFL. And therefore, it makes him kind of a underwhelming option for short yardage. I mean, what's the stat? I think of the Bills had 35 carries inside the 5-yard line. James Cook only got 5 of them. He's your lead ball carrier. So he doesn't give you that component. We'd already talked about pass protection. And so, like, how much better will those three things get? Contact balance, short yardage, and pass protection. I have my concerns about that just based on body composition. Then last year, James Cook had issues with ball security. You know about the drops. He had a 12% drop rate, second highest among running backs with over 50 targets last year. And he fumbled. He had the second most amount of fumbles among running backs that had at least 150 carries last year. So he got some things to clean up. Like, candidly, you can recognize the production, the athleticism, the big playability. All of that's very good. But there's another side to the conversation, and it's like, all right, does he have contact balance? Can he win in short yardage? Can he win in pass protection? Can he stop dropping the football? Can he not fumble as much? Like, those are legitimate things to discuss. So that's why there's always this, like, tug against me when I start talking about James Cook. This is the stuff that I'm also thinking about in addition to, wow, his stats are really good and he's explosive. Let's talk a little bit about Ray Davis, right? You're thinking of concerns here. I think it's fair to point out that at least a decent chunk of your expectations for contributions are going to come from Ray Davis, who is a rookie. So minor concern because I think his skill set is translatable. I think there's a clear path for how he can help the team. I love that he had 1,000 yards from scrimmage from 3 different programs. That says that he's quite the adaptable player, right? That's all very good. I mean, Temple, Vanderbilt, and Kentucky was able to get, 1,000 yards from scrimmage from each one of those programs. So you're thinking of him as this nice complementary piece to James Cook, not only in 2024, but hopefully for a few seasons at least. But if Ray Davis, for some reason, is not really ready to step in and help this team, that puts more on Ty Johnson. That feels okay, but let's be real about it. For as intriguing as Ty Johnson is, he hasn't really done that much in the NFL. This is his 3rd team since 2019. He's averaged, across his career, he's averaged 66 touches per season. Over the last 2 seasons, 39 touches per season. I think Ty Johnson has proven that he's far more of just an ancillary piece than either a secondary or primary piece of a running back trio. And so that only matters because you're like, all right, we've never seen Ray Davis play in the NFL. So as we're being mindful of some of the concerns, I think that that's very, very fair to point out. All right, so those are my personal concerns with the Bills running back situation entering 2024. On the other side of it, I want to kind of tie this all together, have a big picture conversation about how this all works. And I actually have some good quotes that I want to share from Joe Brady. So be sure to stick with me. All right, folks, welcome back in. I said I wanted to kind of tie this all together with a big picture look at everything. We'll talk some James Cook here specifically and just kind of my personal vision for how I think it should come together. But I do want to start with some comments by Joe Brady. Joe Brady, when he was meeting with the media during OTAs, he was asked about James Cook, and I want to share with you what he said. So here's Joe Brady, and then we'll talk a little bit more about this in just a moment.
What do you think about Cook's development as a weapon? And part 2 of that is, how important do you see the play action passing being a threat?
Yeah, I mean, it all goes hand in hand, right? You're trying to be two-dimensional as much as possible. When you're living in a world where you can only throw the ball or you can only run the ball, eventually it's going to run its course, right? And, teams, you got to continue to evolve year to year. And so, whatever success we might have had last year running the football towards the end, we're going to have to continue to evolve that. You can't just pick it up and just continue to do the same thing. James Cook, excited about the progress that he showed at the end of last season and, the mindset and the work ethic that he's having right now that you hope he's the guy that's going to continue to take another step. I love everything about James Cook.
Last year, James had, I think it was 280 some touches, which is more than he had his whole college career. Do you have to find a way this year to incorporate, whether it's Ty Johnson, Ray Davis, whoever it is, do you need to maybe dial back James's usage a little bit this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that is kind of, we'll see. We'll see how, as he's kind of going with it. We feel confident in the room that we have that whoever's playing running back and carrying the football, they're going to do a damn good job. With regards to setting a certain target number, I think a lot of that is just kind of seeing how his body holds up and throughout the season, what he can do. And it's the same thing from a running position is we're going to figure out what runs those guys do a good job of and kind of put them in those positions. And I think a guy like James, he's physically in a better shape than he was. Like, you can look at him, and I can tell he put in a lot of work this offseason. Like, he looks different and in a good way. So I'm excited to see, the type of run style that he kind of plays with this season.
I really appreciated what Joe Brady said at the end there about the work that he's put in this offseason, how physically he looks different, and how that is going to potentially impact his run style. I think that ties together a lot of what I've said to this point in our conversation about, well, what is this frame? Can he win post contact? He's still trying to figure out his identity as a running back. And, with a little bit different body composition, you could play the game a little bit differently. I think about AJ Epinesa to an extent where he dropped a bunch of weight, then put a bunch of weight back on and trying to figure out what the sweet spot is for him to play his best football. And it took him a little time and he figured that out. I'm not saying it's exactly the same with James Cook, but if he did kind of bulk up and added that mass, how does that change the way that he can play the game a little bit? And can it show up in areas where it hurt him in the past, but also at the same time, not taking away from what makes him so dynamic, which is his elusiveness, his shiftiness, and his explosiveness, right? Like, you want all of that to be maintained through any body composition changes. So it's all very fascinating to me, but I think there's some meaningful things that Joe Brady said in there about that piece in particular, and really complimented James Cook and what he did towards the end of the season, and said specifically, I love everything about James Cook. That's the offensive coordinator saying that. That's not nothing. And so I thought there was some really interesting things there from that Joe Brady clip, and I wanted to share it with you, but also the piece about the volume, right? If you guys were part of the conversation on Locked On Bills leading into 2023, I talked a lot about how much volume is James Cook going to command, and I compared that to Devin Singletary and what the norm has been established to be as the lead back under Sean McDermott. And James Cook, from a volume perspective, exceeded any expectation that I had. And part of that was rooted in his backstory to this point. And it was alluded to in the question to Joe Brady, but James Cook received far more volume last year than any other year of his career at Georgia or the Bills. His first season at Georgia, 49 touches. His second season at Georgia, 47 touches. His third season at Georgia, 61 touches. His fourth season at Georgia, 140 touches. Rookie season with the Bills, 110. Drum roll, please, in 2023, 325. 325 touches. That's a huge shot up. And I think that helps you reconcile a little bit the declining production later in the season. And I know that some of that we've speculated, well, is this finally the moment after that Kansas City game and after that Dallas game where teams really started to game plan for James Cook? And all right, now he's kind of have to figure out how to play when there's more of an emphasis on defending him. But also, how much of it was, man, this is a workload unlike anything he's ever seen. And so, should that be the norm moving forward? I have questions about that, right? Like, I think that James Cook, I think the Bills will be well served to incorporate more Ray Davis and Ty Johnson. I don't want to take drastic amount of volume away from James Cook, but instead of being at 281 touches at the end of the season, maybe 250, maybe 230, somewhere in that range, with some of that going to Ray Davis and Ty Johnson. So that way James Cook is able to sustain himself and his production for longer. And of course, when it's the most important, which is later in the season. So here are my conclusions on James Cook. I think James Cook is a good player, but I do think that he has benefited from a great scheme and great blocking. And I think running back is the position that is most reliant on the rest of the offense. And the number that I keep going back to, this is courtesy of the Fantasy Points data suite. James Cook, 2.38 yards after contact per attempt. That's 11th lowest in the NFL among running backs that had 100 or more carries. Again, 2.38 yards after contact. He also enjoyed 2.35 yards before contact per attempt, third highest in the NFL among ball carriers that had at least 100 carries. So he's not getting a whole lot more than what's blocked for him relative to other running backs. Number two is I think that James Cook should be better positioned in 2024 to maximize his opportunity. Not a first-year starter. He understands the volume and opportunity ahead of him. He's worked on his body. He's worked on his frame. All of that should lead to him being better positioned to maximize his chances in 2024. Number three is there's clearly meat on the bone when it comes to receiving production with the drops. And I'll be curious if that continues, how much of that opportunity goes away from him, how Ray Davis factors into this. Ty Johnson can catch the football. I want to see running backs involved in the passing game. James Cook's going to have to catch a ball when it's thrown to him with consistency, especially when he had those chances to catch touchdowns. Number four is I think the Bills will always need a complementary player or players to make up for what's missing in James Cook's skill set. But then lastly, and most importantly, number five, 2024, I think is going to provide a lot of clarity on James Cook and what he's fully capable of in the NFL. And should that be the case, like, buckle up, because the offseason that's coming, the 2025 offseason, if James Cook kind of answers some of these questions and produces again, we're going to start having the should you pay a running back conversation. That's going to be a big part of those 2025 offseason discussions. So we'll learn a lot more, which is going to dictate a lot of the appetite people have for that conversation. Two last things that I want to say is I do want to see Ray Davis step up and into a big complementary role quickly. I think that he could be an asset to James Cook and the Bills rushing offense, but also to Josh Allen. Like, I'd love for Josh Allen to not have 16 rushing touchdowns this year. I'd like for the Bills to be able to actually trust somebody in short yardage to get touchdowns, to convert third downs, to convert fourth downs. Ray Davis is the guy that suggests he can do it. And then I also want to see, from a scheme perspective, I want to continue to see a blended run scheme. So plenty of zone and gap, but I do want it to skew towards gap runs. I feel like over the last couple of years, the Bills, when they run the ball the most effectively, it's gap style runs where you're trying to get displacement up front. You're defining those tracks for the ball carrier. You're using the mobility of your tackles and Spencer Brown and Deion Dawkins. You're using the power of a guy like Osiris Torrance. Like, I think that's where you get the best results rushing the football. And I hope to see that continue to be kind of the leading style of how the Bills pound the rock. So there you have it, folks. Bills running backs, the dynamics entering 2024, what I'm excited about, what I'm concerned about, and the overall big picture. I certainly hope that you enjoyed. I hope that you'll take a second to rate, review, share, and subscribe to the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills, and I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.